So let's dive in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Greg Rublev. I'm the CEO of Runzy and MarathonGuide, and I'm thrilled to introduce a true legend in the running world, someone whose accomplishments stretch the limits of what most of us even consider possible. Our guest tonight isn't just a marathon runner, he's a marathon master. Chuck Engle has over 210 marathon wins to his name. He's been racing competitively for more than 40 years, and he's run sub 3-hour marathons in all 50 states, not once, but twice. And he's completed 500 marathons, including 19 Ironman finishes, and crossed the finish line at the Ironman World Championships 3 times. And before all that, he was an All-American in the 1,500 meter and 3,000 meter steeplechase 3 times over. So tonight's session is 500 marathons, one mission: run smarter, stronger, longer. It's all about sharing the insights and stories and lessons from Chuck's incredible journey, from grueling training blocks to breakthrough races and everything in between. If you're a lifelong runner working on longevity, first-time marathoner hoping to train smarter, or just someone who wants to run with more confidence, you're absolutely in the right place. Chuck is also a proud Marathon Guide ambassador, and we're honored to have him here tonight. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the man who's redefined what's possible on the road, Chuck Engle.
Greg, that's a great intro. I contemplate the stats now and look over the years that I've been running, and it starts with one race, and I think that's probably a great place for us to kick off, as you mentioned. What I'd like to do tonight with the guests that are here, it's a thrill to be here. It's a thrill to be asked to speak to so many of you. I'd like to start off with my first marathon, tell that little tale, and then talk about things that I have discarded over the last 521 marathons and things that I have kept and found to be true. And then at the end of this, we'll, as we discuss things, we'll take a Q&A. There's probably a few questions. I know we're going to start off with ones that were given to us through the registration process, and then certainly from the crowd that we have, we'll take some more. My first marathon, some of you know, Tupelo Marathon. I was a starving artist, as they say. I was a running coach in Clinton, Mississippi, at Mississippi College. And I went into it blind. I had won everything in the state, every 10K, 5K, set course records. I really didn't know what marathon really was about. And I wear the shirt tonight, Tupelo, in homage to that first race. I walked in, and you have to pay registration fees, as some of you know. I didn't realize this. And I walked up, so I'm here to run this race. And Mike Lale, rest his soul, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, you got to pay for that." Because I just went to grab a bib. And 1, the race was sold out. And 2, I didn't know you had to pay. Every race I had done before collegiately, I didn't know you paid. Like you didn't pay. You just walked in. And he said something like it's $120 or whatever it was at the time. And I went to my car and just grabbed whatever cash I had. And it was like $68 and whatever changed in my console. So I've learned now to prepay for the race. I keep that. And he looked at me and he just said, "I'm going to scrape your carcass off the road. This is one of the toughest, hottest marathons in the history of the world." And he proceeded to lecture me on don't die and all these crazy things. I didn't know you had to carry your own water, nutrition. It was foreign to me. I mean, on a track, and even on a 5K, I didn't carry anything. 10K, certainly not. I really didn't know. And everybody had told me it was a 20-mile jog followed by a 10K race. And I had fortunately run a plethora of 10Ks, and I thought, boy, to get you 20 miles and to run 10K, that's easy. Fortunately, Tupelo had great aid stations. They had chips and gummy bears and Coca-Cola, which I never drank soda, but you get into 105-degree temperature, and I desperately wanted something to drink, and it was Coca-Cola for me. So there's so many things there in that single race that were shocking to me. Learning about nutrition just from the get-go, that I got to carry stuff on my own. So many races don't have adequate aid stations. Tupelo was surprising that fortunately I didn't have anything. My mileage at the time was massive. I was running in the morning with my athletes. I was not only a professor in biology, chemistry, I was also asked to, because of my college experience, I was asked to coach the women's and men's cross country and track and field teams. So it paid like a $500 a semester stipend, and being a starving artist, I took my athletic director up on it. So one, bring entry fees or prepay, which we now all do. Learn nutrition. One, carry nutrition, but second, learn nutrition. I didn't know that I was lactose intolerant. For the longest time, I didn't know that. Up until as little as 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't realize that I was lactose intolerant. So learn nutrition, learn to pay entry fees. I hadn't studied the course. I didn't realize that we'd be starting in pitch black. It was 5 a.m. pitch black. I had never run. I was supposed to bring a headlamp. I didn't bring a headlamp. There were so many mistakes of things that I've learned along the way, all of which I'm sure to most of you is common sense. It just makes sense that if you're starting at pitch black in the middle of, rural Mississippi, that you should probably have a headlamp. Yeah, a lot of things that I've learned to carry on. Some of the things that I've left behind are when a race director tells me that I won't survive. After 520 some marathons, I, for the most part, know I'm going to survive. It's a mental thing. I know I'm going to make it through the race more than likely. It's unless something goes terribly awry, I'm going to make it through. That first one through to my last one, which would be this little race in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly. Eau Claire, depends on, I guess, where you're from. I did carry my nutrition at Eau Claire, which is something I've kept through all my races, although that nutrition has changed over the years. I was obviously sponsored by Cliff Bar for 15, 16 years. And then I did away with brown rice syrup, and we can get into nutrition later. But I wear a lot less clothing. Granted, Tupelo is 105 degrees, but I was always a fan of representing the college, the university that I was that I was coaching for. And I just felt it odd that any of my previous events on the track, be it the running in the 96 or 95 Olympic trials for steeplechase as a pacer, you had to wear a jersey and a number. So I learned to wear a number, and I just assumed you had to wear a shirt, you had to wear shoes, socks, appropriate attire. I have done away with much of that. Socks are thin, shoes are fitting to the race, and I've learned to cut holes in my shoes where appropriate, not to destroy the structure, but to get more breathability. It's amazing how much blood when you're running circulates through the feet. It's a common physiology, biology thing. And so I've learned to cut holes in most of my shoes. Fortunately for me, a lot of the shoe companies now have adapted, and they make these extremely breathable uppers. But early on, when I was in Etonic stable air, to date myself, it was a canvas, basically a canvas upper like the old Chuck Taylors. And I would cut holes in those Etonic stable airs. So I would have just the shell of a shoe. The laces would last one race because I would tie the laces around the shoe to ensure my foot would stay in the shoe. It was more like the Tarahumara wear, the thin leather Huaraches, if you will. So that's what's changed between the two races. The first being always carry nutrition. I learned to do that. And then the shoes. Entry fees have come a long way since then. Now it's online, automated. I think learning the course, and if because of the last 500 marathons, I have learned also now with my 15 minutes of fame, I've learned to call the race director ahead of time, just to introduce myself, let them know I'm coming to the race, that at the starting line, there might be people, and this is kind of an ego thing, I guess, but there's people who gather around at the starting line to sign autographs, take photos, which is clearly nothing I ever had to do at my first race. But I was at Grand Rapids last year in October and got swarmed by people who knew I was the prior course record holder and prior winner. And then the newspaper came on to take photos, and that's a new addition. It's kind of a new thing in the last 5 or 6 years, I guess. And certainly nothing I would expect at big races, but just things I've learned over the ways. The big difference are now between that first and extreme heat and going to Wisconsin is I've learned to pick my races. I didn't used to pick races. My races were dictated by sponsors, previous bosses, And now I've learned to pick my own races. So I tend to run flat, fast races because they're just as enjoyable. I like gentle rolling hills. I learned that the hard way at Pikes Peak. So Eau Claire was flat, fast. The weather held off for us. And I tend to do those races now. I just enjoy them more. I'm not that I get too terribly sore, but I'm not nearly as sore after a flatter race. So Greg, that kind of explains my first thing about the difference in two marathons. My first to what was my last race run. Now I've got 4 or 5 more lined up this year, maybe more than that actually.
Chuck, sorry to interrupt. The slides are still stuck on the first slide for some reason. Maybe you have to just reshare it.
Let's see if that has changed. Can you see the new one now? Did the new one pop up?
No, it still says live Q&A.
I will restart. Thanks, Greg. Does that help?
Yes, perfect. It works.
Great. One of the big things after, again, the number of marathons I've done is I've carried this with me now because I've learned it, is knowing when to push versus when to pull back. There seems to be this trend in quantity over quality, which I get. It's ironic for someone who's run more than 500 marathons to say quality or the quantity is a bigger thing than quantity. I still consider the races I'm doing, winning age groups, and actually having won my last marathon just earlier this year, I still consider quality to be paramount. I don't want everybody gets a medal. I get that. I'm still seeking that quality versus quantity. And part of that is that pushing in races nowadays means that I'm going to try to win my age group, win the Masters, win the overall, and I'll push a little bit to do that. Actually, I'll push a lot to do that. What I've gained over the years is that a time to pull back, the only time I pull back now is learning my body and knowing if there's an injury at the precipice. And if I push for that win or that overall, knowing that there's an injury awaiting, that's going to take me away from the roads. And I love the roads. I love running. I love marathoning. And so that's when I pull back. That's not necessarily right for everybody. There's the things I've learned is that if I hear a click, a crunch, something beyond muscular, I pull back. And I've done that for the past 200-300 marathons. A click, a crunch, those are things that I definitely pull back. Making sure that I'm looking at the ground and I haven't stepped on a twig. I've done that at the Mobile Marathon at First Light in Mobile, Alabama. I thought I had stepped on a large branch and cracked the branch, when in fact it was my Achilles tendon that had ruptured, and it sent shockwaves through my body. I thought, I just stepped on a branch. That was probably marathon 102, 103. And I really didn't know that type of noise was indicative of a tendon. It was the first tendon to snap. And I kept running. The adrenaline was going. I was leading the race. I was on the verge of setting a course record, running sub 230. And I had a Mike Threlkel with me, the pacer, and I had the cop car to my left. We came around the corner. They pinched me into the corner, and to avoid wrecking the cyclist, who was a good friend, and getting run over by the cop car, I looked at them and didn't look where I was stepping, and I stepped into a pothole, the edge of it with my foot, and my left Achilles snapped. And I noticed my stride off, and I figured something with my shoe was awry. But that's a good time to probably pull back. I managed to finish that race in 3:08 and was rushed to the hospital. I finished 7th overall, rushed to the hospital. I ended up walking, jogging the last few miles. But if something snaps, you should probably pull back. And that's a lesson I learned after 105 marathons, for better, for worse. Weather. I did the Army Marathon in Kylene, Texas. I was invited by an old Army buddy, and he said, "Hey, got a second-year marathon. The course record, as he put it, the course record is soft." And I've used that term now describing course records. There's a soft course record. He called me and said, "Hey, come on down, run." And I had friends that lived near Fort Kylene, and they said, "Hey, you understand that the storm is approaching. We're expecting hail, sleet, possible snow." And I said, "This is Texas. It's not going to snow in Texas." 2 miles into the race, the temperature went from 64 degrees to 32 degrees. It began raining, which quickly turned to sleet, which quickly turned to hail, which quickly turned to snow, which quickly turned into 40-mile-an-hour winds. At this point, I had learned not to wear much clothing, thought I'd get finished before any threat of a storm would hit. And I was caught naked and afraid, as they say. Fortunately, a good friend of mine, Paula Boone from the 50 States Marathon Club, was standing about mile 4 or 5, saw my frail, shivering body, and, legal or illegal, threw me a garbage bag and said, "You need this." So there's photos. If you Google Chuck Engle and Army Marathon, you'll see photos of me crossing the finish line in a black plastic garbage bag with a horrible look on my face. Probably a moment. Well, no, I set a course record. I won. But in hindsight, because I went into AFib immediately upon hitting the medical tent, probably a point where I should have pulled back because it nearly cost me my life. Again, people talk about whether we're runners, we're tough. I would consider the alternative now. Having lived through Fort Kylene, fortunately, I would consider the alternative. And I hope there's questions about when to push and when to pull. I think there's a lot of scenarios there where that knowledge applies. Let me go to the next, if I can. So can you see the next slide? Mental tools for the hard times?
Yes.
Great. So people often ask when the race gets tough, what mile, and usually it's 18 for me. I think 18 is universal for a lot of people. At mile 18, your energy levels typically start to wane. The race, you realize you've got more than a 10K to go. And I've always looked at it as breaking it down mile by mile. So for me, and I quote Dick Beardsley on this all the time, he's 1 foot in front of the other. Let's just get to the next mile. So at 18, if I start to question things, I say, well, I'll just go to 19. And then I get to 19. I was like, well, okay, 19. Well, let's just go to 20. So that mile to mile thing, as long as you make it one more mile, good. And there's a famous company out there now that kind of started off with Dick Beardsley's phrase of one more mile. Just get to the next mile. When I get to mile 20, I've realized I should probably be fueling more. So at 18, when things start getting crazy, I fueled. I start drinking more water along the course. And then at 20, I go, oh, it's a 10K. And I look back to my experience in my first marathon, and anybody can do this if you run one. And you go, oh, it's just a 10K. You've run 10Ks before. It's just, and you have to say it's just a 10K. That has gotten me through more than 500 of my marathons when I've struggled at any of them. It's just a 10K. I belittle the race. I belittle the distance. It's just a 10K. Now, I would never say I ran just a marathon, but I would say in a marathon, it's just a 10K. So that's one of the tools I use. One more mile. It's just a 10K. I have certain things after the race that I enjoy. Many of you on the line, I can see from some of the attendees that, I enjoy a good glass of champagne or a hug from my wife or a hug from the race director. And those are the other things, the mental concept of getting through that point. The other thing is in a cold race, I have this positive mental attitude of envisioning the warm shower. In a warm race, I have the vision of enjoying the finish line ice bath or that cold glass of champagne. Whatever it is that is a variable for you. For all of us, it's different. I try to speak in general terms and throw out suggestions, but whatever the variable for you is, again, the ice pack, the ice bath, the ducks that float in the little cold ice pools, whatever it is for you that gets you thinking cool thoughts helps. Physiologically, after drinking cold water, I will put ice water on my wrists and hands. You'd be amazed at how flushing the hands with cold water re-energizes and cools things down significantly. One, you've been swinging your arms quite a bit. Physiologically, there's a lot of blood flow going through your hands. And if it's that hot, putting cold water on your hands helps significantly. Obviously, in a cold run, under the armpits, groin area, anything like that helps as well. So those are mental, physical tools that help for the hard miles. I'm trying to think of some of the other mental things that I do. I really do look forward to the next mile. I look for people on the course. There's inherently another water stop. I say, positively, I go, what's at the next water stop? Maybe there's gummy bears. Maybe there's pretzels. I always look to that next water stop, wherever it is, whatever, even at mile 2. I wonder what's the next mile stop. And before you know it, you're at the next mile stop. I look for next mile markers. Like, that was just mile 1. What am I going to see if I get that angry at the race? I look to the sidelines and try to pick out things in the distance that I'm going to get to that telephone pole. I'm going to get to that mailbox. And before you know it, you're at the next mile. Like, all right, there's mile 19. Let's get to mile 20. Those are just a few of the little mental games that I play with myself to get through to the next, get through the finish line or even the next mile. This is one of my favorites. Why recovery isn't optional. I think people look at somebody who's done 58 marathons all under 3 hours in a single year, winning 40 of them, finishing second and I think 9 or 10 others, finishing third and 2 or 3 more. I think people look at that and go, well, you don't recover. One, recovery starts during the week prior to the race. Your hydration, your rest, your nutrition, everything about recovery starts the week prior to the race. You're running, not that I believe in much of a taper, but your running is on kind of the downward side. You're maybe doing some quick pickups just to keep the legs snap fresh. But you should be hydrating with water, copious amounts. You should be eating proper nutrition. Again, most people the last week tend to do more carbohydrates and less protein, except for the night before the race, which is mostly protein. That's when your recovery starts. That's not optional. If you want to run 2 marathons a year or 200 marathons a year, your recovery is during the week before the marathon or even the day before the marathon. Then post-marathon or even post-workout, your recovery is immediate. I know everybody wants to go celebrate. I'm guilty, but I'm going to leave the race finish line for the most part. Or if more than likely nowadays, every race has a post-race party. And you go and you sit, you put your legs up. If there's a massage, you take advantage of it. If there's hydration, you take advantage of it. Take advantage of the things that are near. If there's none of that, if you're at a 50-person race and they don't have immediate food, you got to go. Because standing on your legs, if you can sit and talk and eat, or lay down and talk and eat, even better. But that's also part of the recovery. You've got to move. It's great. I love my fans. I love my friends. I want to sit and chat. But unless I can sit down and get my Dr. Pepper and start my recovery immediately post-race. I don't mean wait 15 minutes and have your talk. I mean immediately post-race. Every 15 minutes you wait, you're doing more damage. You've got to get the hydration back in to flush out all the exudate, all the nasty stuff. You've got to get your legs up to get the blood flow that's pooled in your legs, that's pooled in your hands. You've got to get that up. People see me laying on my back on cold cement. And they, what is he? Is he that tired? No, I know this is recovery. This is what works for me. Physiologically, this is what works for anybody. Race is over. I'm doing my little thing, but I'm going right to the flattest place I can find. Legs up, hands up, and hopefully I've got something sugary next to me. Whatever it is, whatever your drink of choice is, Dr. Pepper, chocolate milk, whatever it is. Lactose intolerant chocolate milk is my choice, but not such a good thing. This pays off. People look at why I do what I do and how I'm able to do what I do. And rather than ask those questions like, you're a freak, you're genetics, and then I show them photos of my parents and my siblings, and they take it to heart at that point. And then there's the question of, well, what do you know? And then you can talk about the advanced degrees. But I think after the number of marathons, that's why I stressed that recovery is not optional. It's immediate. It has to happen now. And it's got to be well thought out. If you know you're going to a 50-person race versus a 50,000-person race, you've got to plan for that appropriately. And that's part of that recovery. Your prior planning is part of that recovery. there's a thousand questions come up on my recovery and what I do, and do I heat, do I ice, and that. There's a long list of physiological things that we could talk about. I think anybody in the running space, all of you included, you really need to experiment to a certain degree and discover what works best for you. I can tell you that I like to lay down, hands up, legs up, and drink my drink of choice, my hydration of choice, water, something better than sugary Gatorade, but something with electrolytes and something with a little sugar, I think is important. But that may not work for you. Your recovery after a 5K, 10K, and I tested this. I would run a 5K all out, 15, 12, 15, 20, and then I would go home or do a certain recovery. I would either drive home and realize the next day I couldn't run for anything. And I tested this early on, well before any marathons. Oftentimes when I had a double events day back to back in college, I would test it in the early meets, where what recovery, what hydration, what nutrition worked. And it really is a lab of one when it comes to that recovery. I say it's not optional because it's not, but you've got to figure it out. Everybody's nutrition and biology is a little bit different. So I'd love to answer questions about that as we go. Guys, that's been 20 some minutes. Let me go to a Q&A. If you want to flip over to the chat, or I think, Greg, we might have some from.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions that people submitted ahead of time. So thank you, Chuck. Let's dive into the questions, and we'll take live questions. So please post them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll be looking at the questions we've gotten from almost 50 different people in the last week as we've been getting ready for this event. So, Chuck, first question is, Father Time is undefeated, but how do you stay healthy and have a positive mindset to be willing to continually compete in various events?
I like the ending of the question first, various events. I continue to do 5Ks up here with the Brooks folks. That's the mental part of it, is that I choose different events. I have my favorites. I mean, there's the Mad Marathon up in Waitsfield, Vermont. There's the Greenbrier River Valley Trail Marathon in West Virginia. I have my favorite events that I try to go to year after year. Those are kind of recalculating. They reset my brain because I know they're fun events, and I always have a great time. But I choose different events. I go to different 5Ks, and I'm very thankful. My wife, my partner in crime, she takes me to all these crazy events. She's like, let's go to this one. Let's try this. And the same thing with my daily running. Mentally, we get in these ruts, and unless you realize you're in these ruts, you stick with it. So every day I wake up and I leave my driveway. I try to leave my driveway at a different angle in a different direction, and I try to do a different run. I'm not the local legend on Strava on very many runs, unless it's when I'm finishing down one of my favorite hills. So I run a different direction every day. And if you're not in a place where you can run a different direction every day, drive. It's okay to drive. I know you're a runner. You're not lazy by driving. Drive to a different location. Find a new path. Find a new friend. That's a daily thing. Now, don't get me wrong. My alarm is set. I get up. I do my run. That's habit versus the mental ability to keep it healthy and keep it motivating. Like, oh, I want to go see this new trail. You've got to mix it up. You've got to. Everything else in your life can be the same. Who you're married to, what you have on Tuesdays, what you drink on Wednesdays. That's fine. That's fine to have the rhythm and the habits in your life. When it comes to running, that's your habit. But where you run and how you run, you've got to change that up. That keeps running interesting. It keeps it fun. It keeps it exciting.
Okay, Chuck. What is the one or two workouts that helps to run a faster marathon time?
Yeah, we've all missed this. And I say we all, myself included, we've all missed this. Speed is my favorite workout, and everybody defines speed differently. And the physiological definition of speed is anything from 0 seconds to 10 seconds, all out. Physiologically, that's the basic layman's definition of speed. Anything you can do at 100% max effort from 0 to 10 seconds. Somebody saw my workout yesterday, and I had my shoulders kind of banged up, but I had my shoulder strapped to my arm, and for 10 seconds at a time, I was running 3:39 pace per mile. Like, oh, you ran a 3:39 mile. I said, no, I was running 3:39 pace for 10 to 12 seconds during the run. And that didn't compute. Like, wow, you're not a sprinter, but I am. If you can sprint at 6-minute pace for 10 to 12 seconds, it makes 8-minute pace so much easier. And physiologically, once you build the synaptic highways from your brain to your legs at that pace, when you're running at 8-minute pace or 10-minute pace, your brain can fire signals so much easier. It's like, oh, I've got all these highways to send signals, to send electrical signals to my muscles. I can relax. And trust me, brain fatigue happens in races. You're thinking about the race, you're thinking about pace. And if you don't have to think about, if your brain doesn't have to do the electrical work to send signals to your legs through these so few and fine electrical synapses, it's that much less glycogen your brain has to burn, which means your muscles have it for use. And that's physiological. That's studies across the board. The less sugar your brain burns, the more your legs have for use. So build those synaptic highways so your brain sends one signal, it finds a way to your legs. I use this analogy. It's like if you're going to get 1,000 cars from New York City to LA, from your brain to your legs. Do you have one highway that's 2 lanes? Or do you have 40 highways that are 40 lanes? I mean, the answer is obvious. You got to build those highways. So that's my favorite workout. I do 4 sets of 10. Well, I started with 1 set of like 5 because that's exhausting when you start off. So 1 set of 4 to 5, all out 100%. Maybe a week later, I'll go to 2 sets of 4 to 5, then 3 sets of 4 to 5. You see where this progression is going. At some point, you get to where you're doing 10 sets of 15 seconds, and then your time drops. You realize that you're no longer running 8 minutes for those 10 to 12 seconds. You're running 7 minutes. And like I said yesterday, it was such a great feeling to know that I had taken some time off from an injury, but the synaptic highways were still there. So yeah, speed workouts, true, and I can't emphasize that enough, true speed workouts, something from 0 to 10 seconds. Make sure you do some training prior to that. If you're sedentary right now and you haven't been jogging gradually and you don't do a warm-up, please do a warm-up. Please gradually jog. And then eventually, after time, then attempt to do these 0 to 10 second sprints all out. Don't just run out the door tonight and say, Chuck said to do sprints. It's not what I'm advocating. Thanks, Greg.
So we have a live question from Alina. What are your favorite myths you've heard about running?
I think the first one is you can only do 1 marathon with quality per year. I realized early on that overall speed for me was probably maxed out at probably 219, 220 per marathon. And I sat down with someone everybody knows. This is not a name drop. He's a dear friend. I sat down with Dick Beardsley, and he wrote a manifesto on what it would take to get me to the Olympic trials in the marathon and maybe early on a shot at the Olympics. And it was a book. It was a novella. It was a book and workouts and weekly schedules, and who better to trust than Beardsley? And his last page said, but Chuck, why? You're proving that you can do more than 1 marathon in a year, and you can do it with quality. So sure, you could focus and do 1 marathon in 219, 220, and be one of 200 people to qualify for the Olympic trials this year. And you'll never run again. That'll be your race. Because we see it time and time again. We see these flashes of glory. They go out and they run this 1 marathon. And sure, they may run 219, 220, a gradual percentage better than me, 8% better than what I run 50 in a year. And so I made the conscious decision to go against what I thought to be truth, which is you can only run 1 or 2. And I said, well, how many can I run with quality? And I was within 4 or 5% of my PR for, 58 in 2011. I ran within 5% of 231 for almost every single race. So that's the biggest myth, is that you can only run 1 quality marathon per year. I think it varies, but I disagree with that myth. I think that's a complete fallacy. Okay.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah.
When do you know to quit and when to apply grit?
Yeah, I love this question too. I know we talked about weather Certainly if the race director cancels the race. I didn't have this feeling until it concerned my wife. And I'm not going to get emotional, but if you have significant other children, I realized that what I did to myself that day might impact her. That was the biggest change for me, is when to apply effort. And she's going to be proud of me regardless. But what impacted the answer to that question, when I was going for the expression of hell bent for leather, it was when my wife, when we got married and prior to that dating, I realized there was more to live than just my own selfish interests. So that's one answer to that question. And then we talked about the clicks and the grinding. If you hear that, you're going to be a hero, but choose your moments. Like, this is a personal statement, but to finish dead last in a marathon because you think you're a hero and you might look crippled and you might be crippled, that's a good time to quit. Don't do that. Don't get me wrong. I know there's races that celebrate what they call DFL, dead freaking last. But there's proper training. I get it. Let somebody who earns dead freaking last, let them earn it. Someone who set out to run 4 hours and they end up running 6.5 because who knows what went wrong, but something out of their control happened. Let them get the dead freaking last. That's a better story. They overcame cancer, or let them have that glory. Everybody else, I think, when they run into circumstances, they should probably pull off the race and wait for the sag wagon. I think those are two fair answers. There's probably more out there, I'm sure.
Okay. Have you ever backed out of a marathon days before or during?
Yeah, financially, I backed out of marathons when I realized I either missed getting my flight months before, or even back in the early days when I was a broke artist, when I didn't have enough gas money to get there. And so, the days before I'll go, oh, I don't have the gas money, or the plane flight has now gone from $149 to $1,400. And I DNF. I mean, I've started races, I've not finished them. My thought there on the DNFs is that I have to toe the line in order to finish. And I'd like to give myself the chance. So days before, when I've messed up on logistics, I've been forced to back out. If I get to the race, I'm going to the starting line. And that's not necessarily a smart decision. I recognize that. But if I get to the race, I'm going to the starting line. In fact, I told my wife and her dad, as we stood at the starting line of Ironman Texas 2 years ago, I looked at them both and I said, I should not start this race. I was in extreme gastric distress. I was dizzy. I was sweaty. I was pasty white. I knew I had something going on bug-wise and internally, and it was a poor decision on my part to start. But I love her father, and I thought, he's here. Again, stupidly, I said I can't let him down. Never mind the chance of drowning on a swim or crashing on the bike ride. I should never have started that race, and I ended up DNFing after the bike ride with extreme gastric distress when they took me to the hospital. We all know. I think there's that, pardon the pun here, but the gut feeling. If you shouldn't start a race. It does none of us any good to finish a race dragging a leg or blowing our guts out across the finish line. Oh, you're a hero. Behind my back, finally, people have come to me and said, that was a dumb thing you did. And behind everybody's back who does stuff like that, they may cheer you on at first, but then that guy was an idiot. That was stupid. Why did he do something that dumb? You're going to get your loyalty friends saying stuff, but behind your back, I promise you, because I've heard it firsthand, wasn't very smart, was it? After the fact and not publicly. And I admit it wasn't smart. So.
Okay. What is your best advice for mentally dealing with fatigue and pain nearing the finish of the marathon?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier. I'm glad it circled back around. I focus on the finish line and all the things that come with that. And that goes with the bragging rights of wearing a medal, either to the next restaurant I go to, on the plane if I'm flying, I focus on the bragging rights of being in the 0.00001% of the population who just achieved finishing a marathon. Once you've finished one marathon, that after effect feeling is unlike anything in life. And I mean, unlike anything. Take your wildest dreams. For me, finishing a marathon is unlike anything in life, because you can never take that feeling away. You can never repeat the feeling of finishing a marathon. It is finishing a marathon. So mentally, that's what I focus on. I also tend to focus on what I did wrong. If it's that bad and that ugly where I'm considering the DNF, what did I go wrong? What did I not do? Oh, did I eat the wrong stuff last night? Did I not hydrate correctly? And before you know it, your brain's thinking about that stuff, and you forget about the legs and maybe the vomit and maybe the torn calf or whatever. You forget about that stuff. Think about what did I do wrong? That's one thing I've done multiple times. If I'm in a bigger race, this is probably odd, but I think about the signs along the course, or I think about people I'm passing. Oh, they're worse off than I am. They're struggling. I look great compared to them. I know it's wrong, ethically, morally, it's wrong, but it'll get you through the finish line. We do this every time. It's why we're addicted. I think so many people are addicted to social media. Oh, they're having a much worse day than I am. That's why you're glued to that stuff, right? Like, oh, that guy's house just burnt down, or he lost in the flood. We don't tune in. 90% of us don't tune in because we care. They tune in to see the horror. So you're on the course and you're feeling horrible. You just want to not be the person that everybody else is talking about. I feel better than that person. My house didn't flood. And that's what I look and go, oh, I got to look better than that person. And that positive feeling, even though you feel like awful, that positive feeling, it grows. And then you pass 2 people, and then you pass 3 people. And if that doesn't work, you can look at people on the sidelines and go, I'm out here doing this. They're not. And it's a self-building ego, if you will, when you're on the course. And you're like, hey, I'm not sitting on the sidelines getting drunk and wasting my life. I'm going to finish things and have bragging rights. So those are some of the mental things that I do. There's a plethora of others, but those are just some of the things that I go through.
Okay. What do you do to avoid injury and maximize your time on the roads?
Funny enough, I would say don't get into 40 mile an hour bike rides, but avoiding injury for me is the proper buildup. And let me give this plug for coaching. Whether you use Runzy coaching or whether you find it, you've got to have a sounding board. You've got to have a coach. Coaching is my go-to. I have multiple sounding boards, people who have done what I've done and beyond, people who've run faster, people who've run longer. I constantly reach out to them for advice. If you don't have somebody like that, I'll be your person. If I've done, maybe I haven't, but if I've done more than you have or something that you'd like to do, I'll be your sounding board. Send me a DM on social media, sign up for a Runzy coach. You've got to have that sounding board. Again, Beardsley was great at allowing me to not get injured because he said, you could do that, but it will probably destroy your legs. The sheer volume with which you're going to have to train to get to the Olympic trials, it's going to destroy you. And I was like, well, how do you know that? He goes, well, I've watched hundreds of other athletes go through that experience of OTQ, and you never hear from them again because they're injured for life. So my injury stuff is, people do stretch, do you lift weights? I do things that encourage flexibility and encourage strength. I tend to run a lot of hills. We have a little loop here that I call uppy down. And I introduced my wife to the uppy down hill workout. She's like, wow, it's noticeable. Hills are your friends. I know hills suck. You learn to like them eventually. One of the most recent fearless competitors from one of Hess's athletes. I can't think. Caitlin Toohey. Her famous quote was "Hills pay the bills," and yes, I attribute that quote to her. Nobody else said it. Caitlin Toohey said, "Hills pay the bills," and you could see her physical demeanor when she got on the track. That rather than lifting her legs, she pushed off every single stride, be it a 3,000, 5,000. So hills prevent injuries. I mean, don't go out and run Pikes Peak tomorrow because I said hills. That's common sense. But you've got to start incorporating hills. Antagonistic work So running hills as well as running backwards. If you haven't incorporated hills and running backwards, those are two of the biggest injury preventative mechanisms that I could suggest, and that I do. I don't want to say daily, but daily.
Okay. How do I prevent leg cramps during a marathon or during training of over 15 miles?
Yeah, I think nutrition is, again, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's good to circle back to this one too. Nutrition is critical. I've taken courses. I'm not a certified dietitian or a certified nutritionist. This is a lab of one, and I experiment almost weekly with what my body can do. Cramps absolutely, unless you've got something, genetic, but it absolutely comes down to nutrition. You're either overhydrated, underhydrated, you're getting the wrong nutrition in. One of the things that I recently discovered for me was manganese. Like, who the heck cares about manganese? I started drinking coconut water. And within the day of drinking coconut, I'm not suggesting go drink a ton of coconut water. I'm saying for me, I started drinking a little bit of coconut water, just like a little half cup. It put the right electrolyte balance in my body. And I noticed it immediately. I'm not saying that's how it's going to affect you or impact your running, but for me, it was coconut water. And I don't mind experimenting with these things, whether it's coconut water or, to keep hydration in, creatine, monohydrate creatine. I mean, there's certain things that I do and supplements that I've added, some that I've taken away. And then my nutrition on the course. I do e-gel. It's by Crank Sports, e-gel. That's completely revolutionized my running in probably the last 6 months. It's a little pricey, but again, for me, if you're struggling with that e-gel because brown rice syrup's too sugary, and I mean too sugary as in the sugar content is too high, and maybe get e-gel a try or try other different gels. Again, experiment. You've got to go out and don't. This is, again, you see this everywhere. Don't do it race day. You're on the course and, oh, look, honey, what do they call honey badger, whatever those honey things are. If you've never had it before, don't try it on race day. Simple enough.
Okay. And provocative question: why did you come back out of retirement?
Well, the easy answer is money. Dan Ashworth, and again, he's a great friend, not trying to name drop. Dan Ashworth, who president, owner, CEO of Ashworth Awards, makes t-shirts. You guys know him or know of him. You've probably got a shirt in your closet if you've done any races at all. I retired and he called me, and Dan and I have been friends for a quarter of a century. And he says, if you retire now, you won't make it 5 years. And he said, you'll get fat, you'll get depressed. Without your therapy, it's not good for you. And I took it to heart. And he said, look, I'm paying for your Boston trip. I'm paying your airfare. I'm paying for your room. And I thought, wow, another free race? Sure. So I did. I took Dan up on it. And I'm wearing Tupelo tonight, but I thought about wearing Boston. If and when, and any of you can, if and when you get a chance to do Boston, do it. Because it was my first race back. And it reminded me of everything I love about running. Millions, not even kidding, millions of fans on that course, throughout the course. The finish line had to be 2 million, and they're cheering for you. Yeah, there's a couple other runners around you, but they're cheering for you. That just tells you that what you're doing is incredible to 99% of the population. And the fact that we all can do it more than once. You can do it as often as you say you want to do it. The fact that we can do it more than once is what keeps me doing it. I think Prefontaine said it. I know Prefontaine said it best. Having met his mother before her passing, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. I think we've all been given that gift to run, and to not do it is a waste of that gift. So between Dan's putting his money where my mouth was, and having been given a gift, that's what brought me back.
How is age impacting your running?
I'm busy. I think age has brought on, I'm busier now, and I'm really working to declutter things. Um, the things that used to occupy my time, I'm trying to do away, but age has given me more things. I have a house, so there's upkeep, and I'm blessed to have a house. I have a yard I have to mow. I get to mow because it's actually walking and exercise. Age has given me more priorities. Getting married, our zoo, as we call it, the house, it's given me, for better or worse, higher priorities than running. That's what age has done for me. I continue to strive for my speed workouts, my long runs. I think my higher priorities have been just that, priorities. And so I have not done the two-a-days that I once did. I have not done the back-to-back, Friday, Saturday, Sunday marathons that I once did. So I don't know that it's age as much as priorities, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I think we have time for one more question. How do you keep motivated and passionate about running?
Yeah, I think year to year, I look at those races that I love doing. Again, I mentioned two of them. Year to year, I look forward to Greenbrier River Valley Trail Marathon. I look forward to Mad Marathon with Dory Engels. That's what keeps me motivated year to year. I look forward to seeing the same people, and then I look forward. I look forward to those new events, and I've got to pick those. You've got to have friends, family, crazy friends that help you pick those new crazy events, whatever they are. You've got to find the new events. Have your staple, your staple of events that you do, be it one or two that you know you're going to go out and train for. But then I think you got to pick the new crazy events. Those are always good. That's one of the biggest things I can tell you. And I reward myself every birthday with a new running outfit, and I look forward to that. It's silly, but I look forward to new shoe day. That keeps me motivated to keep going because I love this. Come on, who amongst us hasn't opened a new box of shoes and, oh yeah, that smells like running, right? Maybe it's just me, but I like a new box of shoes.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Chuck. That's all the questions we're going to have time for. Do you want to say a few more things about what you wish you knew then?
Yeah, I wish I'd known earlier. Like, I wish I'd known the power of caffeine. I wish I would have known the reckless nature of alcohol. I wish I had known the ability to push running. And I mean, every athlete I've ever worked with, they lift. And if you've not ever pushed, go try it. You're going to get increased stride length. You're going to get lower heart rate. Of the athletes, I wish I would have coached better, younger. I wish I would have taught them how to push in running and not lifting. Think about your hip flexor. It's this tiny little golf ball to maybe softball sized muscle. And that is what you're using to lift the leg. And it fatigues quickly. And we run slow because it's fatigued quickly. Think about your gluteus and your hamstrings and your calf. They all push. You've got a multitude of muscles. I wish I had known running and coaching how to push and not lift. I wish I'd known the benefits of caffeine. And I preached this early on, like no caffeine, no caffeine. And then one day I took a vanilla bean goo. And I popped, I think, 2 or 3 of those things. And I didn't realize they had, I think, 25 milligrams of caffeine. And within minutes, my last 10K dropped from an average at Boston, oddly. My last 10K dropped from like a 44 average to a 36. And I had no other explanation as to why. And so now I continue to, well, my wife will hear this, but I continue to do the caffeine race day and know the time, because the benefits of caffeine, and please check caffeine first to see if it's how it works with you. Caffeine is such an ergogenic aid So much so that the NCAA has banned more than, I think it's 5 cups. Like you can't have more than certain deciliters of caffeine per milliliter of blood or something. It's like if you have more than 5 cups, you're going to get kicked out of the competition. This is one of the good things age has brought, is they're not testing me for caffeine. There's no blood test, urine test for caffeine at my age. Despite winning a national championship, they're not testing for that. They don't care about caffeine at my age. So, yeah, caffeine.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. If you found tonight valuable and want more of this, we've got more coming. We'll be hosting a series of live sessions like this one and rolling out new training content and community features designed to support committed runners like you. Chuck, thank you for sharing your time and your experience and your insights. It's been incredible. And to everyone who joined us, thank you for showing up, for investing in your training, and for being part of this community. Thanks so much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.